So there may be no UFC on this weekend, but there is going to be a very good card on next weekend taking place in the UFC Apex. Gilbert Burns fighting Sean Brady in the main event of this card, which really could be taking place in front of a crowd if you ask me. There's fights on here which have ranked contenders, exciting prospects in some fights, and also nearly guaranteed finishes in a lot of these fights as well. I do think top to bottom, this is a fun card. This is a card that is going to deliver with some very exciting fights and some very exciting finishes. And overall, I am just genuinely looking forward to watching this card. I think it should be a pretty good one. Now, of course, a reminder, there is the Contender Series on at the moment too. So we will be getting Contender Series Week 3 and Week 4 on before this card does take place. And I will be uploading my Contender Series videos to my channel and also to the We Want Picks channel as well. And also with, of course, We Want Picks, they do have the premium membership service, which is $10 per month, where you get access to Angelo and Jacob's bets, where they have been very profitable recently, as well as access to my articles that I'm writing every single week about the Contender Series, about PFL, about every non-UFC kind of event that's on right now. And if you do sign up using my code ARTEM, you do support my channel a lot, and it is a 3-day free trial if you do use that code ARTEM. So with that being said, let's get into the video. Another quick one as well. I do appreciate all of the support recently from everyone. Recently reached that 7,000 subscriber milestone, which is pretty massive. I personally had a little bit of a goal to reach 7,000 subscribers by Contender Series Week 7. And let's just say that goal was absolutely smashed by about 4 weeks. So maybe the new goal could be like 8,000 subs by week 8. But I mean, that's a lot, but we'll see. Let's talk about the first fight of the card, going to be Zygimantas Ramaskas fighting against Nathan Fletcher. Of course, both of these guys were on the Ultimate Fighter. Both of these guys were also meant to fight in the event that was just last weekend at the time of me recording this video. And the information that I got was that both of these guys actually had staph infection. Now, I think that some people were saying it was to do with Nathan Fletcher's broken leg that he got on the Ultimate Fighter, sorry. And then some people were saying it was due to Ramaskas health issues or Ramaskas having staph. From what I was told, both of these guys had staph infection go into that fight. So just a bit gross, honestly. Clean up your gyms, guys. But yeah, it's going to be rescheduled a couple of weeks, but the pick I don't think is going to necessarily change for me. I was originally picking Nathan Fletcher to win by using his grappling. I think he is going to probably have to avoid the striking of Zygimantas, as he is very aggressive. He is very powerful. But I do think that Nathan Fletcher is going to be able to use that grappling to take out this fight here. I don't think that there are odds for this fight right now with the rebooking, but I think that Fletcher was a slight favorite. And I would be somewhat surprised if that did change, even though most people are still on Zygimantas. I am going to be picking Nathan Fletcher by submission still in this matchup. And now we move up to middleweight. In my opinion, not really the best one. It is going to be Andrade Petroski fighting against Budka. Two wrestlers, and in my opinion, two guys that just don't necessarily put on the most exciting fights from what we have seen so far. Budka, of course, did recently get signed to the promotion based off a win over Chad Hannacom, if you guys may or may not know. Chad Hannacom failed a drug test after the fight for cocaine, so that was pretty intense. Dana White says, hey, come to the UFC PI. I want to see you try and fight at 170 pounds. He obviously couldn't make that 170 pound mark, so now he's just going to have to be a small middleweight. He lost to Cesar Almeida in a fight which he failed to get the takedowns. Red flag, in my opinion. If you can't take down Cesar Almeida, I don't think that you can take down Andrade Petroski. Now, I don't rate Andrade Petroski too highly because I think that he is quite one-dimensional. I think that he does have very, very solid grappling. His wrestling's pretty decent as well, but I do think he can be a little bit lost on the feet. If you do watch him, he really only throws hooks on the feet. That's kind of it, and he's throwing 125% into them, so he's not really powering down at all. But I do think that this is a good matchup for Petroski. I think he's going to get another gift after he's given a pretty good fight against Josh Fremd last time. I think he's going to get another one here in Budka. I think that he does beat Budka. I think it probably is by decision, just by out-wrestling Budka and controlling on top. Now Gabriel Santos takes on Yizha. I originally liked Santos a lot in this matchup, and then I watched a little bit more tape on it, and I feel like it's hard to explain, but I feel like Gabriel Santos has not looked as good in the UFC as he looked prior to the UFC, because the way that Santos really kind of put himself on my radar personally was winning this tournament that the LFA hosted a couple of years ago, where he beat Marcio Barbosa. Very good prospect, knocked him out, and I think that was a war. That was like a second round finish, if I'm not mistaken, after losing the first round. And then he goes out there and knocks out Jose Delano in the third round. And then, of course, he gets signed on short notice to fight Lerone Murphy, gives him a tough fight with the wrestling, and then goes out there against David Onama. And in moments against David Onama was defending the takedowns and even reversing position against him. And I don't like seeing that, because I look at Yizha, and I think if David Onama can reverse positions against you on the ground, Yizha can do the same thing. And that is why I'm going to slightly side with Yizha. I originally thought that Gabriel Santos was just going to be night and day better on the feet, and that was how he was going to win the fight. But going back and looking at Yizha's fights, I can tell that he is going to be shooting for the takedowns. I can trust him to do that. He shot for takedowns in every single fight that he has had on the road to UFC tournaments, which he fought some decent competition up and down, I do know, but still some decent competition there compared to where he was fighting in China. And in moments in those fights, you could see some very good grappling, and I do think that in this matchup, if David Onama can reverse position on you on the ground, Yizha can as well. And that's where I'm going to be going with the pick. I don't feel confident in it at all, because I do think that Santos is the significantly better striker. I think he's the significantly more powerful striker, but Yizha's not going to make this fight take place on the feet. I'm pretty confident he's going to wrestle, and wrestle often, and that is why I'm going to side with him in this matchup as a pretty decent underdog at the moment. And now Andre Lima fights against Felipe dos Santos. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I love Felipe dos Santos. He is probably one of my favourite fighters at the moment. He was one of my favourite fighters before he even got signed to the UFC. And one of my favourite fights of all time is him versus Hugo Paiva. Now, it is definitely still up for debate whether or not he won that fight, but if you can ignore the decision, man, that's a fun fight, and I highly recommend watching it if you haven't seen it. I've recommended it every single time I've had the opportunity to talk about Felipe dos Santos. Man, it's a good fight. And then I feel like he had a great fight against Manel Kape. You know, yes, he did lose, but I think he made it very competitive, gave Manel Kape a pretty tough little test there, and then beat Victor Altamirano. And in my opinion, he did win the fight, because I thought that he did more damage, but a lot of people do disagree. He's taking on Andre Lima now, and I'm seeing a lot of people picking Felipe dos Santos in this matchup, but as someone who is a massive fan of him, this is a good matchup for him, but it's also a bad matchup for him. Now, it's a good matchup for him in the fact that I know for a fact that Felipe dos Santos is going to be the more aggressive fighter in this matchup. I know for a fact he is going to be landing more volume, or at least throwing more volume, I should say, because Felipe dos Santos is a typical shooter box guy. He's always pressuring forward. He's always throwing bombs. He's always doing something crazy like a jumping knee and stuff like that, and he's got very fast kicks. But he is not the more technical striker in this matchup. Andre Lima is a former professional kickboxer, and in my opinion, he has been able to showcase that skill set in the UFC so far. He beat up Rickson Zenadine pretty easily on the feet in that matchup. Had some trouble with Igor Severino, let's be honest, with the pressure, and then he did beat, in my opinion, pretty clearly Mitch Raposo. But what you can take out of that matchup is that he was very tentative, he was very low volume, he should have been throwing more volume, and now he's going to be taking on a guy in Felipe dos Santos who I know is going to land, or not land, he's going to throw more volume than Lima, and I know who is going to be pressuring forward against Lima. And another thing about Felipe dos Santos that we haven't really seen, I guess, too much right now in the UFC is the fact that he can grapple and that he will offensively wrestle. And when you do watch Andre Lima take on guys like Mitch Raposo and Igor Severino so far in the UFC, he has struggled with that pressure, and I do think that that pressure is going to overwhelm him, which is why I'm going to now very ever so slightly side with Felipe dos Santos as the underdog here. I do understand that maybe you could see this as a bias pick because I am a big fan of him, but he is a massive guy for flyweight. He is going to be a good striker. He's not as good at striking as Lima, but he's going to be more high volume. He's going to be pressuring forward, and I know that he's going to be attempting takedowns. And I think so far what we have seen out of Andre Lima's career in the UFC, he doesn't respond too well to pressure like against Igor Severino, and he didn't really look so good responding to pressure against Mitch Raposo either. So ever so slightly siding with Felipe dos Santos, a very slight underdog here. I think that the odds could potentially flip, by the time that fight rolls around. They did open even, and now Andre Lima's been bet on to be the favorite here, but I think Santos might flip to a favorite by the time that the fight week does take place. Isaac Dulgarian takes on Brendon Marotte. The odds are what they are. I mean, I feel like Dulgarian, if people bet on him, really could just become the biggest favorite in UFC history. And what I do think happens is I do think that also Isaac Dulgarian does take down Brendon Marotte, and I do think he finishes him on the ground with ground and pound in round number 1. I don't really have much else to say aside from that. It's just not a good matchup for Marotte, man. Like, I don't really know if Marotte has any good matchups in the UFC. I guess he had a chance to beat Muhammad Yahya, but now he's coming down a weight class. I've seen Marotte taken down before. I think he gets taken down again, and I think Dulgarian gets it done. That's kind of it, I'll be honest. Now we can move up. Jacqueline Amorim fighting against Vanessa Demopoulus. Amorim minus 350 is absolutely insane. She is still minus 300 on some sports books, but maybe minus 350 is the current line. Yeah, it's an interesting one because both of these girls are small for women's strawweight. Both typically are the smaller fighter in their matchups, even though Amorim did take on Ruiz, who is tiny for the weight class. But I think that Amorim does win. I think that she is the better grappler out of the two, and I think it is just kind of what it comes down to here. Vanessa Demopoulus just somehow wins decision. She shouldn't, and it doesn't make sense. I don't think she beat Emily Ducote. I think that there's an argument that Marotte won that fight, honestly. I mean, I think she did beat Oliveira. She did look pretty good in that fight, and she definitely didn't beat Junyun Fry. So, I don't know, maybe Demopoulus just gets another weird decision here, but Jacqueline Amorim is a multiple-time Jiu-Jitsu, I believe, world champion, and if not a world champion, multiple-time world Jiu-Jitsu championship competitor, and you can see that in her fight, even in her fight against Sam Hughes where she lost, I think that she did still showcase a lot of skill in that round number 1, despite not even being able to finish Sam Hughes. And that kind of is a little bit of a red flag because she was in perfect positions in the rear naked choke position to choke out Sam Hughes, and she just didn't have the strength to finish off the submission, and Sam Hughes was able to kind of just win based on her gassing out completely and winning round 2 and 3. Amorim, I think, has made some pretty good improvements since then. I think she's looked better than she did it in that debut, and I do think she can beat Demopoulus in this matchup here. Demopoulus isn't very good at striking. Amorim isn't really either, even though she has got a lot of KOs on the regional scene, which is kind of crazy, but yeah, I think Amorim wins. That's the pick. I'll be honest with you. But Demopoulus could just get a decision out of nowhere. She always does for some reason. Now OSP fights against Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann's an interesting one to me because I feel like he actually does have skills to put it together, and he just doesn't. Now I think there's still some people out there that disagree and say that Ryan Spann just sucks, which I guess you could kind of tell. But I don't think so. I think that Ryan Spann genuinely is a pretty skilled fighter for this weight class. He just doesn't put it together at all. He's very big. He's 6'5" with a 79-inch reach. You watch his fights, he's got very good straight shots, and he uses them very well. But then he just loses. Like, it's a fight IQ thing. It's an execution thing as well, I guess. Kind of like he can have a game plan, he just can't execute it. It doesn't really make that much sense. A big red flag is that Anthony Smith lost because he just looked bad in that fight. He did. Like, he made really bad decisions throughout that matchup. But he did lose to Bogdan Guskov, and I feel like that's probably the worst loss out of the two, especially since that loss didn't happen in the first round, and Bogdan Guskov has been quite notoriously known for just not handling pressure and having no cardio. And then he knocked out Ryan Spann, like, near the end of round 2, which is insane. But I do think that Ryan Spann can beat OSP. OSP is 41 years old now. I don't think that he's looked very good in any of his recent matchups. I know he's got a win over Kennedy Nzechukwu, which is a good win. Don't get me wrong. But Nzechukwu is a very unreliable fighter. Sometimes he shows up, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he gets knocked out by elbows that didn't land. You just never know what goes on with Kennedy Nzechukwu. And he did beat Shogun Rua in a fight which some people actually think that Shogun won, which was kind of interesting. But yeah, I just can't. I can't see Spann not knocking out OSP. Is kind of what I'm getting to here. OSP is going to strike with Ryan Spann, and I think he's probably going to get knocked out. I think he's going to be a lot slower than Spann. He's going to be a bit smaller than Spann in there as well. Spann is a big guy for 205. He's an athlete. He's skilled, but he just doesn't put performances on. He just doesn't, which is weird. But I do think that he can get it done, and I do think he wins by knockout, if that makes any sense at all. Let's move up now to Rongzhu fighting against Chris Padilla. I did pick Yizha earlier, and I am going to be picking Rongzhu as well. So that means that I'm going to be picking both of the guys that won the Road to UFC tournament last year to win their UFC debuts. Well, technically for Rongzhu, it's not a UFC debut because he actually was in the UFC a couple of years ago, and he was only 21 years old, I think, when he did make that debut in 2021 against Rodrigo Vargas. And if you watch that fight, it is probably one of the most frustrating watches you can ever have, because he throws, I think, 9 strikes in round number 1, and then when he starts to increase the volume in rounds 2 and 3, he looks good. So he just threw away the fight by not throwing any strikes. It was a very odd performance, and I think that it did kind of showcase maybe he was nervous, maybe he wasn't really ready for the bright lights of the UFC, and then he missed weight a couple of times. But since then, he's now moved to the Shanghai Performance Institute, and I think he's made some very good moves there. I think he's improved a lot. He looks a lot more of a patient fighter. He looks like a lot more technical fighter, and I think that he just overall is starting to look a lot better. You know, the weight cut hasn't looked too bad. I thought he looked good on the Road to UFC tournament, took out a couple of pretty tough guys, such as Sang-Uk Kim, who is a solid grappler. He took out Sung Chang Hong by KO, I believe, pretty early into the fight as well. Very, very good knockout win there. And then he beat Shin Haraguchi, who, although probably is a bantamweight, let's be honest, is a very good wrestler, an under 21 freestyle wrestling world champion. And in moments there, although he was getting taken down, he was able to stand up pretty easily. He's taken on Chris Padilla, who kind of come out of nowhere, I guess, on about 4 or 5 days notice against James Lontop, and he submits James Lontop in that fight, and he looked pretty good. You know, James Lontop, though, was able to land a couple of big shots against him prior to the finish. James Lontop looked like he kind of stunned Chris Padilla a little bit, but Padilla was able to get the takedown, and James Lontop just gave up his back just like that. Very, very good, quick win for Chris Padilla on very short notice, and you do like to see it. Padilla, I think, out of the two, might be the more, I guess, like, strong fighter, because Chris Padilla, although he is 5'9", which isn't very tall for the weight class, has a pretty, like, big build. Like, he's got pretty big arms, pretty big shoulders, and I think that maybe he's going to be the more powerful guy out of the two. But I do actually like Rongzhu here, because I think that Rongzhu can defend the takedowns of Chris Padilla, and on the feet, Rongzhu has proven to me, at least, that he is a pretty solid striker, and I do think that, you know, being a little bit competitive on the feet with James Lontop, and I'm looking at Vyacheslav Borchev when I say this, is a pretty scary look. So I'm going to go with Rongzhu. I'm going to pick Rongzhu to win. I'm going to pick him to win by decision. But I think that this is a good fight, and if you're looking at Chris Padilla at plus 205, he could be a very good underdog, but I'm going to go with Rongzhu in the matchup. And now Trevor Peak fights against Yanal Ishmouz. Banger. Absolute banger. For a second there, I thought that maybe we were going to be getting Yanal Ishmouz fighting against Terrence McKinney, because Terrence McKinney tweeted him, like, kind of on top of a red fox. It was kind of a weird tweet to make, but no, to my understanding, this fight is still on. I think it's a banger. I think it's fun. Now, True the Peak is just fun. That really kind of is what he is. To me, I think that he is not a very technical striker at all, but what he is very, very aggressive and very, very offensive, really, because he's just bombing away hooks, he's bombing away overhands, he's got big leg kicks, and he's going to be looking for that first round knockout no matter what it costs him. The one thing that I have been very impressed by Trevor Peak recently is actually the addition to his wrestling game, which he has added on. You know, he didn't really look like he had any wrestling whatsoever, kind of, when you looked at his older fights, but then he got out-grappled by Chippy Mariscal, who took him on short notice, and then when he fought Muhammad Yahya, he really won that fight with the wrestling, and that was quite impressive to me. He did try and wrestle Charlie Campbell, but ultimately was just outboxed by the better striker, in my opinion, in that fight. So now he's going to take on a wrestler in Yanal Ishmouz. Now, Yanal Ishmouz, I thought he had the knockout of the year against Sam Patterson. I think a lot of people were trying to give it to Islam Makhachev against Volkanovski. I understand, but I mean, Sam Patterson was fighting the ref for, I believe, about a minute after. That's a brutal KO, man, and I feel like it's those brutal KOs like Carlos Prates versus the Leech, that are like the big ones, you know. And for me, that was the KO of the year for Ash Moose. And then he goes out there against Chris Duncan and breaks his arm in the first round, and somehow makes it competitive with Chris Duncan in round 2 and 3. His arm, you could see it. It was separated. It was disgusting. And he couldn't do anything with it. And he only was throwing, I believe, left hands. He couldn't do anything else. But because Chris Duncan made it competitive. We'll leave it there. I think Ash Moose can win against Trevor Peak because I think on the feet, although both of the guys are not the most technical strikers and both of these guys are just going to try and knock each other out, I think Ash Moose is the better wrestler out of the two. We haven't really been able to see Ash Moose show his wrestling in the UFC so far, but he definitely does have it. I think that he can out-wrestle Trevor Peak, and even in moments land on Trevor Peak as well on the feet. The odds are very close. I think that it's because the odds makers are really respecting the power of Peak, which I think you have to do, but I'm still going to side with Ash Moose anyway in the fight. Now we have some crazy odds, some crazy wide odds here. Matt Schnell is a massive underdog against Alessandro Costa, and I think everyone is just absolutely scared of Matt Schnell's chin. Absolutely terrified. Because this guy has been KO'd way too many times for a flyweight. Flyweight is a pretty great division. They put on fantastic fights all the time. But one thing that you don't see that many times in flyweight are knockouts. And Matt Schnell's been knocked out 5 times. 5 times. At flyweight. He got KO'd by Usyk, got KO'd by Nicolau, KO'd by Pantoja. I mean, these are pretty good losses to have, I guess, if a good loss exists. Got knocked out by Font, Hector Sandoval when he was in the UFC doing his thing. And that's it for the KO losses. But it doesn't matter. He's been KO'd a lot of times. He took a lot of damage even against Sumaraeji in his win there in that matchup. Even though in that fight, Sumaraeji was giving him hell on the feet. Sumaraeji was beating him up on the feet, and then he got that comeback win out of nowhere. It was a brutal win for both guys, man. Both guys took so much damage in that fight. That was a crazy one. But yeah, I think that in this fight against Alessandro Costa, you look at Alessandro Costa, he trains, I believe, under Diego Lopez and alongside Alexa Grasso. Don't know how her name slipped over my head there. And he's a good fighter. He was on the Contender Series. He was on the Contender Series in, I believe, 2021, 2022. He beat Andres Luna Martinetti, wasn't given the contract, which I thought was somewhat odd, but then got a KO win in 12 seconds over Carlos Gomez here, and was signed on short notice to fight Amir Albazi, and won the first round against Amir Albazi. Gave Albazi trouble in the first round, and from there, he's looked pretty decent. The wins that he does have in the UFC aren't that great, though. I mean, knocking out Jimmy Flick and beating Kevin Borjas, who I don't think is going to get a win in the promotion, are the best wins. But having a pretty close fight against Steve Usyk, where you take a round off him and give him trouble on the feet, I think is definitely enough to justify leaning on Costa in this matchup. I do think that Costa can win this one. He is a little bit scrappy on the feet, kind of a little bit like a Diego Lopez, except the miniature version. And I think that he is going to go out there, land big shots on Matt Schnell, and also go for takedowns if he needs to. I think it is a Costa KO. It seems like the odds makers think it's a Costa KO. Seems like Tapology thinks it's a Costa KO. And that's it, really. That's it for that breakdown. Moving up to Kyle Nelson versus Steve Garcia. In my opinion, Kyle Nelson kind of got the short end of a stick here, because he was meant to fight against Calvin Kattar, who I believe is still ranked and is still a pretty big name. A lot of people recognize that name. But now Kattar pulls out, and now we get Steve Garcia, who is on an absolute tear right now. A 4-fight knockout streak. I believe the longest knockout streak in the UFC right now. And if that's not true, then it's the longest knockout streak in the UFC's featherweight division right now. And he's been looking good, man, because I feel like at some point in his career, I was personally getting a little bit worried for him. But now he's on a 4-fight win streak. He was 1-2 at one point. Now he's 5-2, and he's beaten some good guys. A win over Malcazal Costa in that way. Very, very good. A win over Shayla Nurdimbeki. Good win. In my opinion, a lot of people might disagree, but that's a good win. And then beating Chase Hooper is a win that has aged incredibly well. He was at 155 pounds at one point, and that's kind of where the concern come from, because Charlie Ontiveros did knock him down twice. And then Maheshate Hayasea nearly took his life, which is insane. But now, 4 fights later, Steve Garcia is actually knocking on the door of a top 15 opportunity. I do still have some concerns about Steve Garcia's chin, but I don't think that Kyle Nelson is going to be the guy to snatch it. Kyle Nelson is just a guy who just wins. I don't really understand how it happens, but he just wins, because he's on a 3-fight win streak right now. Blake Builder took him on and did nothing but taunt him for the whole fight, so of course he won. And then after that, that's where things really started to change. He knocks out Bill Algeo in like 90 seconds, which is just insane. And then he beats Fernando Padilla, who was a fighter that I thought had a lot of promise and is now kind of showing he might not have any promise at all. But I do think in this matchup, Steve Garcia can win. Now, although that Steve Garcia has been dominating people with knockouts on the feet, Garcia is a very well-rounded fighter. He does have good wrestling. He does have decent grappling, offense, and defense, as well as he showed against Shayla Nurdimbeki. And another thing as well, despite being a massive guy for the weight class, he's got good cardio as well. And I do think actually in this matchup, I think we see Steve Garcia go out there and get another knockout win. I think that he does knock out Kyle Nelson. Nelson's a very tough guy, but I think that we're going to see Steve Garcia go out there and get another one. 5 KO wins in a row, and I think with that, he's going to get a ranked opponent in his next fight. And now we move up to the co-main event. Jessica Andrade fights against Natalia Silva. I actually had no idea that the odds were this wide. That is pretty insane, but I think that what we've seen out of Natalia Silva so far is just the fact that she is a very promising prospect in this weight class. And I'm just going to triple check. It is at 125 pounds. So that means that Jessica Andrade is going to be moving up. Now, I actually don't think that Natalia Silva is going to look significantly bigger than Andrade in this fight, because one thing that I have kind of thought about a little bit for Natalia Silva is that she does look quite small for 125 pounds, and I would be genuinely curious if she could make 115 pounds, but I don't know, maybe she can't. But the thing is with Silva, she is just kind of showcased to be one of the better strikers in the division so far. She's got very good Muay Thai, she's very, very fast, she's very reactionary with very good counters, and she just kind of put everyone on notice, really, throughout her career. Had 3 very good wins to start out, but now she's taken on 2 ranked opponents. I believe Andrade Lee was ranked at the time, and Araujo was definitely ranked at the time, and it's looked very good against both of them. A mirror matchup against Andrade Lee, 2 Muay Thai strikers, beats up Andrade Lee pretty easily. Kind of does the same thing to Viviane Araujo, and now she takes on Andrade, who has a very odd style overall. I feel she can wrestle and she can strike, but the thing about Jessica Andrade with me, I do worry a little bit, because she looked pretty... It was Erin Blanchfield. That was that long ago. She's fought that often. That's insane. Against Erin Blanchfield found a lot of success on the feet against Jessica Andrade. I don't like that at all. Another thing that I don't like necessarily about Andrade too is just the fact that now Natalia Silva is going to have a reach advantage that typically isn't really the case for her. She is very small, only 5'4", with a 65-inch reach, and now Silva's going to be the taller fighter with more range. And I think that with that, Silva's just going to be able to piece apart Andrade from the outside. Andrade is not a technical striker. Andrade does not have the best striking defense necessarily, but what Andrade does do is pressure a lot, is very tough, and can get the takedowns if she needs to. But I think in this one here, I would be surprised if she can land a big shot against Natalia Silva. And Natalia Silva has already defeated good wrestlers, good grapplers. Like, she defeated Araujo, who's a decent grappler. And Teresa Blader, although a lot of people might meme her for that KO loss, is a very, very good wrestler as well. And Blader was finding a lot of success in the wrestling in round number 1 against Silva. But Silva was able to escape some pretty tough positions and come back with a very good win. And that's why I think that Natalia Silva wins. I'd be surprised if Silva gets a KO here, but I feel like it very well could happen as well. I'm going to pick Silva by decision, but because she's been looking so good recently, she genuinely might be able to find a finish. But I think that Silva wins this one here. I think Silva wins this one by decision. I think it's going to be pretty clear. She just is the better striker, clearly, out of the 2 matchups. But I do worry a little bit if we do start to see Natalia Silva take on the top of the division, because I do think that she is still a little bit small for 125 pounds. And now we can move up to the main event. Gilbert Burns fights Sean Brady. And I'm having a very, very tough time picking this fight. Now, I understand that I have faded Sean Brady a lot in his career. I actually picked... Did I pick I think I did pick Gastelum to beat Sean Brady, you know? And I definitely picked Bilal Muhammad to beat him too. And then I don't think I picked Chiesa to win. But the thing about Sean Brady is, like, I just don't know how good he is, because he just doesn't really, like, impress me all that much, aside from the grappling, you know? He's got decent wrestling, he's got decent grappling, but the striking, I'm so concerned about the striking. Bilal Muhammad was piecing him up and TKO'd him. Bilal Muhammad doesn't do that to anybody aside from Leon Edwards somehow. And then against Michael Chiesa, probably one of the worst strikers in the entire promotion. In fact, I might actually say he is the worst striker in the promotion. Michael Chiesa was piecing him up on the feet. You know, these are concerns to genuinely have. And if you look at a kind of similar matchup, and this is going to sound insane, but this is a somewhat similar matchup. Gilbert Burns gave Khamzat Chimaev a very rough matchup in that one there, defending some takedowns, getting out of some very tough positions, and really coming back and landing some big shots on the feet. And then if you look to a matchup that is the complete opposite, but it's somewhat similar, I guess, in some... No, it's not similar at all. But if you do look at the Jack Della Maddalena fight, Jack Della Maddalena had Gilbert Burns respect because Gilbert Burns made him respect his striking. So now we're looking at this matchup here, and you've got someone who is a very much better of a striker than Sean Brady, respecting the striking of Gilbert Burns. And a similar matchup as well, somewhat, in Khamzat Chimaev, who's constantly wrestling, constantly grappling. Burns went out there and found a lot of success in that matchup. But I guess you could have some concerns in a way of how is Burns doing now that he's 38 years old. He was injured in the Bilal Muhammad fight, which I think he took on short notice, but he got injured in that fight. And then he was up 2-0 going into the third round on some judges' scorecards against JDM. And then he gassed out a little bit. JDM was able to finish him off. So how does he look in a 5-round matchup, in a grueling matchup that's going to be Sean Brady? Because Sean Brady is going to be constantly wrestling, constantly grappling. Although they're both 5'10", Brady's going to be significantly bigger in the fight as well. But I do think that Burns can outlast him, and I am going to do that. And my original pick was Sean Brady, but I'm going to flip it here and now. I rewatched tape on this one last night. I did my tape study, obviously, for it, and then I looked into it more, and I rewatched tape on the Yizha fight, and switched my pick to him. And I've done the same. I watched tape on Gilbert Burns, I rewatched the fight against JDM, and I think that's one thing that you have to kind of notice, is that Burns was getting the respect of JDM on the feet, you know, and he was 2-0 up on JDM in that matchup, and he was getting the takedowns against JDM, and JDM is quite notoriously known for very good takedown defense. But now he takes on Sean Brady, and I do worry about that. I just worry. I just worry about the striking of Brady, because I think Burns is a significantly better striker, and you can look at a Khamzat Chimaev matchup in a way and think that it can be somewhat similar. We haven't seen Sean Brady go 5 rounds yet. Obviously, we have seen Burns go 5 rounds, but I do worry that if he does get into the 4th and the 5th round, Brady is going to be the more tired one, because his style is so draining on the gas tank. So I think maybe you could just fade me for this pick, because I have been so wrong on Sean Brady so many times now, and by so many times, twice. Well, once, actually. I've only been wrong on him once. Because, man, he just doesn't fight often, does he? He just does not fight often. But yeah, I've only been wrong on Sean Brady once. I just feel like I've been wrong on him so many times. But yeah, I'm going to go with Burns. I'm going to go with Burns' late stoppage. I just think that Brady's striking, it scares me so much, man. And I do think that Burns can outlast him. We've seen Burns survive against very difficult opposition in the past, and comes at Chimaev. But I do worry about the age. I think that Burns definitely probably is getting towards the end of his career now. I feel like we probably won't see Burns get a title shot ever again. And I know that's probably pretty sad to say here for a lot of people. But I think that Burns can beat Sean Brady. He's shown that he can deal with very offensive, dominant wrestlers in the past in Chimaev. He's got the respect of decent strikers in the past like JDM. And I don't consider Brady to be one of the better strikers in the weight class. So I think Burns can get it done here. Late finish, late TKO win for Gilbert Burns. Plus 155 underdog on most sports books. Plus 145 on Tapology. That's the picks. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I might re-record this video if I do end up changing my picks, but that's kind of it. I'll see you guys in the next one.